Well, there's evidence of intentions to maintain current headcount amongst companies in Australia. We're looking at some findings of the Hudson Employment Trends Report, which also shows almost 65% of employers intend to keep their current employee numbers. Let's get across to Mark Steyn, who's the CEO of Hudson Asia Pacific. Mark, great to see you. Thank you so much.
Nice to see you, Brooke.
Interesting stats that have come out of this. About 63% of employers intend to maintain their current headcount. So that's up. 24% say they'll increase, about 13% are saying they'll decrease. What is the message that you're getting from that?
Look, I think there's a couple of messages. I think the first one is that the significant cost cuts we've seen, that have happened over the past couple of years, where Australian organisations did grow rather large on the back of the growth we'd seen in Australia for many, many years, those cost cuts have been taken for the most part. The second thing we're seeing, which is around the holding steady, is really the cautiousness that still continues and permeates around what's happening on the global front. And that is really important and a key part of it. Having said that, there's a counter pressure, and that counter pressure is, how do organisations adjust for the new norm that we are potentially entering in the Australian economy, and that's creating demand or a change in the skills that are required.
The new norm, what are you talking about there?
Well, you think about where Australia is today, and you think about the changes it's gone through. You look at the Australian dollar, you look how high that is. You look in terms of what that's driven in terms of the cost of labour in Australia. You look at the commodity prices, energy prices, and a question mark around those, which is how do we compete in this current environment? I think the second piece is, and what's happened with productivity, sorry, I should have thrown that in there, which hasn't really increased much over the last number of years in Australia. And then I think you throw in on top of that, the cautiousness that I spoke about, and will the growth ever go back to what we saw over the past 17, 20 years? And if it isn't, how do we compete?
It's interesting. So it's not necessarily this day-to-day noise, just a sense of the problems are long-term in terms of the global picture.
I don't think it's about the problems are long-term. I think it's about Australia understanding that they need to go through a structural shift.
Yeah, okay.
And you'll see one of the key areas that has increased a lot is IT, for example, and really positive sentiments coming out there. And you've got to step back and say, what's happening? And I think, whenever you see a lot of IT spend, it's typically driven by organisations trying to transform two things. One is their cost base, and they're looking to automate a lot of what they do. They're looking to streamline a lot of what they do. The second piece is they're trying to figure out how they drive revenue growth in a market, and in today's market, it's all about taking share. And they're leveraging technology in a lot of instances to try and do that.
Give us some thoughts around the findings of the various states and territories. Any evidence that you've got the cool down in the WA and the Queensland against the pickup in the New South Wales and Victoria, that's the story that basically the RBA wants to start seeing, that move away from relying on those resources, parts of the economy, and that shifting away to the non-resources economy for that area to start picking up. Any signs of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So two things. I think first, when you turn to the resources states, we've seen some improvement in both WA and Queensland, and I think that coincides with the commodity prices hitting their low kind of midway through third quarter through last year, and we're seeing that starting to turn around, albeit slower than in the past. The positive news, as you mentioned, is in New South Wales we are seeing that sentiment return, and that's incredibly positive. And this is the international hub of Australia. It's where all the multinationals tend to be headquartered, where the big banks are headquartered, and that positivity we are absolutely seeing in New South Wales. South Australia has struggled and continues to struggle. We're not seeing that positive sentiment there. Having said that, there is some positive outlooks on new mining developments in SA, and I also think the SA government will help reinvent that state. You've got a highly educated workforce, and you've got a very stable workforce, so it becomes a great centre for organisations to look at setting up part of their processing and operations. ACTs remain flat, and no surprise, they're really looking to hold their staff steady. We've got an election year this year, and probably no surprises on that front. And Victoria, again, a little bit more stability again, looking to hold, but we haven't seen further deterioration in Victoria, which is positive from our perspective.
In your release today, I can see the phrase retain key talent. This is the big challenge for employers and businesses, isn't it? We've got a borderless world. We're trying to attract the best minds to our country. What's the latest thinking or advice that you're giving companies at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge piece, and it's not only, you're absolutely right, it's a global piece that's playing out, and it's also around, the economy's been tough, and so people haven't necessarily got the bonuses they've been used to, they haven't got the pay rises they've been used to, so how do you compete? And how do we also not only compete, but make sure we've got the talent in our organizations to position us for transforming our organizations and help us with their transformation and to compete by taking market share. And so people are investing a lot in their core skills and capabilities. We're seeing a lot of work around identifying top talent, identifying those individuals with potential, and really investing in them. And that doesn't necessarily mean just sending them on courses. It's about giving them opportunities, giving them lateral moves, and really building their capabilities as business leaders. Because at the end of the day, it's those leaders, middle management, top management, that are going to be the cornerstone of whether Australian organisations succeed. It's all around the human capital, and those are the people you don't want to lose.
Mark Steyn, thank you very much. I was going to say Mark Hudson. From Hudson, Mark Steyn, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Brooke. Bye-bye.